Hey, everybody. We're back with Movie Chatter, and I tell you what, this episode is...
It's going to be so much fun.
This is going to be so much fun. Let me tell you, I can't even begin to describe how excited I am about this episode.
And you get to see this movie, what, 3 or 4 times? I only got to see it twice.
Hell no. I don't hate myself that much. We're going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrections. You'll notice it's just Lou and I here today. Robin is not here. She is out doing some nonsense, celebrating Tim's birthday or
I don't
something.
get that.
I don't know. Yeah. We're not really paying attention. But I think she just didn't want to have to suffer through a discussion about this movie.
I think she'd be sad that she missed this because, wow.
Well, it's going to be an interesting episode. That's for certain. Wow. In a series all about like the duality of human beings and yin and yang and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This interaction right here is going to be very yin and yang, I think. Yeah, two sides of the coin. It's going to be interesting.
Well, I'll say this, that, and we'll get into this further, but you got to sell me on why this is such a bad movie, because I enjoyed most of it. I'm not saying it's not without its flaws.
Get ready for the most intense sales pitch of your life, Lou. You think buying a used car is rough? Dude, sit back.
Okay, I'm good.
All right.
I got you.
So, Matrix Resurrections just came out in December. It was both in theaters and on HBO Max. It is now no longer on HBO Max. We kept putting it off through the holidays and everything else, and now we're finally covering it the week that it leaves HBO Max. Go figure. But it's coming back soon. You can probably still find it in theaters, though I definitely would not recommend it at all. The duration, 228 very, very excruciating long minutes.
Wow.
It felt like about 4.5 hours, didn't it?
No, it was awesome.
Directed by Lana Wachowski, written by Lana Wachowski and David Mitchell and Alexander Hemon. I would think with 3 writers, probably others too that just didn't get credit in IMDb, that one of them would have thrown a story into the movie at some point, but we'll come back to that.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, one writer could write things. 3 writers, I think what happened in the writer's room, they all just figured the other 2 people would get around to it, and then nobody ever did. That's kind of my suspicion. But
oh, good Lord.
We'll come back to that. This is the 4th movie in the series. And I'm going to get into the cast and stuff in just a minute. But Lou, let's talk the world of the Matrix and what our experiences are with it, things like that.
Sure.
Go back to like the first time you saw the Matrix, what you thought of the sequels. Have you done any of the, we'll call it extracurricular stuff, like the video games, the comic books, short stories, anything like that?
Yep. Of course, the first movie coming out was game changer, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was amazing. And that got us hooked for everything that you wanted to do. And I didn't do much with the comics or I did the video game.
No, which one? There was the console game and the MMO.
And I did the Enter the Matrix game.
Okay, the console game.
Yep. So played that a little bit. I didn't get a chance to play the MMO, but that looked pretty good too.
It was pretty good.
Of course, watched all the extra stuff, the Animatrix stuff, and was rabid to get the stuff when we got the second and third movies out, which were not quite as good as the first, but I think we had huge expectations for the second and third movies, and they were never going to live up to it, no matter what they put out for us.
Did you like or hate the second and third movies?
I liked them. They're enjoyable to me. I don't hate them. I think I didn't really care for the way it wrapped up. That seemed a bit too not on point for the movie. You know what I mean? It was too different. But I take that with a little bit of
Oh, I can't wait to talk about the end of this one then.
With it. Well, the ending of this one's the problem I have with it.
Oh,
too,
okay,
but,
good. You have just in that one sentence, you've renewed my hope in humanity, Lou. That's good. I feel better.
Okay, well, I'm glad I could do that for you, Eric. I think that seeing the movies and getting to watch everything we've had so far has been I mean, I don't want to say, world changing for me, but it really was. I mean, it gave you so much to think about. It wasn't just a movie you'd watch. You'd watch it and think about what it meant, and obviously it means different things to different people, and it means different things to the to the Wachowskis than it does to me as a viewer.
Right.
But I think everything about that first movie was so spot on and so perfect that it was just like, this is really awesome. I can't wait to get more Matrix stuff.
Yeah.
And then when this was announced, I had the same worries I think everybody else did, but I also felt that, the trailer gave me a lot of hope. It looked really good. I didn't do the spoiler things like you do. So going into it, I was kind of like, okay. And, the first half to 3/4 of this movie had me sucked in so much. I was like, this is really good. Could have been better. There was things they could have done differently that I think would have been better for it. But we'll get into that more as we go along. So what's your background with The Matrix?
Okay, so like you, I saw the first one in the theaters. I think I saw it opening night. Fell in love with it immediately. It was... I'll come back to that in a minute. Second and third movies, I didn't mind them. I'm like you. Like, they weren't perfect. I didn't even mind the rave scene. There were a couple of scenes I didn't like, and they're not even the scenes that everybody's been talking about. Like, I didn't mind the second and third ones. They weren't as good, and that's okay. I didn't mind how they wrapped things up. Excuse me. I think it was okay. And in fact, I liked the third movie. I liked the real world scenes in the third movie better than I liked most of the second movie and the Matrix scenes in the third movie. In fact, by the end of the third movie, I didn't really care about Neo and Smith anymore. I was more interested in what was going on at Zion.
Okay.
That whole battle thing felt more intense to me. The stakes felt higher, and I kind of, the video game-ness of the Neo versus Smith thing and what they call the Burly Man brawl in the second movie, especially, just looked so not computer animated, but almost like hand animated. We nitpick now about special effects in different things like Disney Plus shows and stuff. It's like, the effects didn't work in this scene. That whole sequence in the second Matrix movie didn't work for me. Anyway, but the sequels I thought were fine. I loved the Animatrix. I loved all of the world building. The Animatrix, the comic books were basically similar to the Animatrix. I loved all of those things. I loved this world. And one of the things I loved about the Matrix itself, we talk a lot about Flickchart. We haven't actually in a long time. Of the thousands and thousands of movies I've ranked, The Matrix is number one on my list. Okay. And it's because not only is it a good science fiction movie, and it's a good action movie, but it has so much depth. You've got the, like I said a few minutes ago, the duality of self. You've got man versus the machine. You've got man versus nature. You've got man versus self. You've got religious overtones. You've got philosophical overtones. You have simulation theory. I mean, the concept of simulation theory alone, there have been books written on it. There are college courses. There are documentaries. Philip K. Dick back in the 60s was talking about simulation theory. Are we living in simulation? And like you can go so far down that rabbit hole that people have actually been institutionalized for going too far down that very rabbit hole.
Right.
Which there was another documentary on that recently. I think it was on Amazon Prime. It was pretty good. I love this world, and I love the first Matrix movie. And I'm really forgiving of all of the other stuff about the Matrix because at least it's the Matrix. I've always said I'll take a bad Matrix movie if I can get another Matrix movie. And boy, was I stupid. I feel really freaking stupid right now because this was a bad Matrix movie. But in a nutshell, I didn't like it. Your thoughts?
I mean, I liked it. Yeah. I mean, it brought me back to where I wanted to be, and it gave some really good, it was a good entry back into it. I felt like they did that right as far as going back in with the therapist and what was going on and who he was and how they got back into that. And then it fell apart, halfway through where it didn't become as fun and ended up kind of a mess. But overall, I feel like you did. It felt like a good. I wanted more Matrix, and it felt like this is what I wanted. I got it. It was like I'm happy with that.
Okay, you mentioned spoilers. when they talked about doing another Matrix movie, I was immediately on board. I'm like, this is great. Joel Silver, the Wachowski's coming back. Well, Joel Silver is not coming back, and it's just Lana. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's still good enough. And I heard different rumors about, it was a Morpheus prequel because they had a younger Morpheus in it, or this and that. And I'm like, okay, we'll see how it all shakes out. But either way, it's going to be awesome. And people are like, I don't know, another Matrix movie? You saw the sequels, right? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then somebody leaked, not literally the entire movie, not like the script or anything, but somebody sat through the entire movie and then wrote up as much of it as they could remember immediately afterwards and leaked it online. And it was darn close. Like, there were a lot of details missing, but right down to like Bugs being one of the character names, the cat showing up, like there were the specific scenes all the way through. And I thought, there's no way, this has got to be fake. And the sites that I trust for spoilers are like, no, this person's legit. This is someone we vetted repeatedly before. This is real. And I'm like, no, it can't be. This is dumb. Like, if this is what they're doing with this story, this is the lamest approach to a story I've ever heard. It cannot be this bad. It can't be. And I didn't believe it. I dismissed the rumors. And then the trailer came out. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, okay. There's trailer.
The trailer came out. It confirmed, like, everything that was in the trailer, it lined up 100% with the leaks.
Okay.
And I posted in Discord, I said, guys, I'm this is the least excited I've ever been to see a trailer before, because it looks beautiful, but everything lines up for the story being just a mess. And when we get the movie, and in my opinion, the story is a mess, and we'll come back to that. There are some good points too. I agree with some of what you said. And I want to hop into that thing about the beginning, but go ahead.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So let's kind of break this down by, kind of sections of the movie.
Okay.
The first, third, I guess. Maybe we'll say
two things real quick before we go on, though. The effects were great.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
No complaints about the effects.
Yep.
And the acting and directing were great. I have no complaints about the acting. I have no complaints about the directing. In fact, the other people they brought in, Jonathan Groff, I thought did great. Jessica Henwick from Iron Fist as Bugs, I thought she was great. Neil Patrick Harris, I thought was great.
Yep.
He played kind of the same character he always plays, but he did it perfectly.
It was well done. Yep. Yep. I mean, I had issues with them, not having Morpheus as Morpheus, and what they did with that character as, the bot,
the
or
conglomeration
the
of the two sets of code between Morpheus and Smith, kind of.
Right. That kind of didn't work for me. And having Smith
the
as the
actor
other guy
did a good
there,
job. The actor pulled it off
Yep.
flawlessly. I didn't like the way the character was written, and that's separate from my quote writing issues, because that has to do with the story. I thought the dialogue was good.
Oh yeah. And I know there's reasons why they couldn't have the actors do what they needed for the actors, but it would have been much better if we still had, the Smith actor and the Morpheus actor back there. Yeah. Lawrence Fishburne, and I remember Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving. And I know he couldn't make it because of the COVID stuff.
Right.
Not sure about Lawrence Fishburne.
It was things beyond their control too. Yeah. So it's tough to do that, but it would have been better if we had them, But
to your point,
starting out with the movie, that first, third 45 minutes of the movie or so, where we're getting back into the Matrix, we start out with that. So we're going to do spoilers now, I guess, right? So we're going to talk about this.
Spoiler warning.
So if anybody hasn't seen the movie,
if you haven't seen the movie, you might want to stick around. We might be saving you 2 hours and 28 minutes of your life.
There's worse things you could do with 2 hours and 28 minutes.
It's a very short list.
Oh God.
Like,
okay, so
scoop your eyeball out with a rusty spoon might be worse. Not sure.
Okay, so fair warning, spoilers are coming out.
Yeah.
So we start out with basically the opening scene is kind of like what we started out with in the first Matrix movie, right? We had
almost literally.
Yep.
Except very not in specific ways.
Right. So it was the same kind of thing where you're looking over somebody else's shoulder and you're kind of in this scene that you don't know is where, and then you realize what's going on because we've seen the movie before and we know what the Matrix is. I thought that whole section was really well written and really well done. Right. It was a great intro to get back into this movie. How did you feel about that?
I would agree with that. I liked the conceit of, it took me a while to really, I think it takes a bit of that first act to catch on to the whole modal thing, what it is, why it's there, what Neo's doing with it. The second viewing, it made even more sense, and I was able to enjoy it more. I like that introduction. I like I liked that intro where things were like close to the original movie, but not exactly like the original movie.
Yep.
And then things like the story changed at one point in that sequence. And that was really interesting to me. And then we get into what Neo is up to now. He's a game developer. Right. He developed a video game called The Matrix, that all that footage that we saw in the movies, that was footage from the video game. And now he's working on the next game. I thought that was a really good way to introduce him coming back into the Matrix, getting back into this world. Things have changed, and we had peace and happiness and rainbows in the sky and all that kind of stuff at the end of the third movie. And now we find out, okay, well, not so much for him.
Right.
Though he's supposed to be dead. So the fact that he's alive at all, I mean, not a bad thing. Okay, so that's good. Something to be grateful for. Though he obviously does not enjoy his existence. So we get a little bit of the culture of hyperbole with movie designing, game design. Oh, we have to be everything to everybody all the time, and we're going to make it the most awesomest awesome in the history of awesome. And people sitting around a room together, basically just, this is a PG podcast, how do I put it? Inflating each other's egos, and not actually getting anywhere with anything. And then you've got the scenes of, him at the gym, and everybody's on a treadmill. Nobody's getting anywhere.
Right.
There's a lot of symbolism there.
Yeah.
Everybody's running and standing still. Everybody's in the elevator together, but alone on their phones.
Yep. Like it should be the Matrix movie. You want to have that symbolism of what's really going on and what we're experiencing and how it isn't right.
And that's one of the things I love about it is in the Matrix series, they don't preach to you, they show you. And you get to dig through that. Up until this fourth one, where they show you and then they preach at you for a really freaking long time. And then when they're done preaching, somebody else stands up to the pulpit and they preach. And it's preachy, preachy, preachy.
Come on.
Preaching. Nonstop. Even the choir got involved, dude. Like... They did show.
I mean,
they showed too.
They showed too, yeah.
I liked that.
It was handled differently.
That part worked.
They did that differently than we had been seeing before in Matrix stuff. But I still really enjoyed it. It felt like we were getting back into this. And it was different because now, we knew what was going on and the main character didn't yet. So it was kind of like we're trying to say, God, doesn't he wake up? Doesn't he know what's going on? And then there's the whole thing with the pills he had and the whole blue symbolism we talked about in the trailers.
The blue symbolism was great.
Yep. And I was like, okay, so when's he going to snap out of this and wake up and do this?
And how he sees himself in the mirror versus his residual self-image and all of that kind of stuff. Again, those, they showed you, they didn't tell you for that part. And that was great. By the way, you said I got to sell you on how bad this movie is. I'm saving that to the end. I've got points.
Okay.
So listeners out there and viewers on YouTube, stick around because it's coming.
I get it.
I got a list.
I'm sure you're going to hit me over the head with it.
But, I mean, it's a meteor. I would tell you to duck or hide under something, but the whole chunk of the planet's just going to be missing after it hits. So
just like Don't Look Up, right?
Exactly.
Which I finally saw.
Yeah, pretty good. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
Right? The first third, really solid. The only thing I didn't like, so one of the things where it got preachy was the whole sequel reboot kind of thing. It got so meta that it got to be painful. Like it made a point, and that's great, and then it beat that horse to death, and it's like, okay, we get it. And then they kept beating that dead horse, and all the way through, there are back at one of the very first scenes, Bugs is talking to who's it, Seek?
Yeah.
The guy who kind of appears as a hologram in there, but isn't physically air quotes, in the Matrix. Okay. So she says, why use old code to mirror something new? Or he says it, one of the two do. And I'm like, I didn't catch that the first time around. Second time around, I caught it. That's subtle. It's symbolic. I like that. That they do right. And that kind of harkens back to them bringing this back as a sequel, right? Why use old code to mirror something new? Why just rehash that same thing and put a different coat of paint on it? Right? Perfect. But then they keep going further and further with it. They're talking about, Warner Brothers is forcing us to do a sequel, and if we don't cooperate, they said they're going to make it anyway, and Terminator contracts and blah, blah, blah. And it felt too heavy-handed to me.
See, and
it was no longer symbolic, and instead it was just flat-out preachy.
See, I like that line because to me it was kind of like them taking a shot at Warner Brothers themselves within the movie and not being...
And that's fair, but to me it was the quantity of it.
Okay.
It was the quantity. It wasn't whether or not individual parts were good. It just felt really saturated by it. And this goes back to symbolism, and so I kind of like this. But you remember the scene in the theater. They get Neo out, they take him into the theater, and you've got Morpheus sitting there in a chair that's kind of trying to somewhat look like the environment where he first met Neo and gave him the pills and stuff like that. Plus, there was his reference in the bathroom scene where he was quoting lines, and he's like, Psh, yeah, it's a little different, when you're in the hotel room there and here where, I'm popping out of a bathroom stall. It was symbolic there, a little heavy-handed. It was symbolic in the theater, and you've got the torn screen playing scenes from the original Matrix movie, and they're talking about, we tried to set it up like it was before to make you comfortable. That was symbolic, and I liked it. The problem was the movie was so oversaturated with the stuff by that point that by the time we got to that point, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, we get it. And I feel like that scene was brilliant, except we were so tired of hearing it. I was so tired of hearing about it by that point.
Okay, and I couldn't appreciate feel that way. I didn't get to the point where I was going, okay, we're getting this again. I never really felt that in the movie. I felt like it was still pretty well done and wasn't banging me over the head with something that I didn't need to see.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess that's just where I differ from you in terms of how I viewed that scene.
And I hope people don't view it the way I do, because maybe they'll like it better as a result. And it was really heavy in the first act. The second and third acts weren't quite as bad with that point. But I kind of feel like the first Matrix movie is layered with a lot of different topics. And this one, it felt more like they crammed a lot of different topics in, a lot of different themes, philosophy, things like that, and didn't really let you just explore on your own. They kind of force-fed it to you.
Okay.
It felt that way at some points. But, all right.
No, I get it.
So let's see. I'm looking at some of my notes here. So we get the awakening. What do you think of the battle in the office building?
I thought that was probably one of the better scenes that they did fight-wise.
I would agree with that.
To me, the rest of the movie, the fight scenes seemed like they didn't have a purpose or a point. And that's where some of the things kind of broke down for me. In the first movie, all the fights seemed like they really meant something, and there was something going on, and there was a point to what they were doing. In this movie, the fights kind of felt like, oh, it's been 15 minutes. We need to throw a fight scene in here. Yeah.
I felt like the sequels were that way, except the end of the third one. And the end of the second one's okay, but I think a lot of the first and second act, it was like insert fight scene here. So... But this one, I think the office building, I agree with you. And part of it, I think, was because of where Neo was in the, quote, story. And again, I'm using story with air quotes here. But the way that scene wrapped up, I thought was brilliant.
Yeah. Yep. And I think part of it might be, too, that, I know the first three films so well that I kind of know where, it's like the story's got something going on and we're going to have a fight scene here. And then the story's got something going on in the fight scene. Yeah. This movie, to me, I couldn't follow it as well because I don't know it as well. But it's like, okay, well, it's obviously it was a fight scene. What are we fighting about? And how do we get here? And what are we doing with these characters? And it didn't seem as I guess it was easier to follow in the first three movies, whether you were in the Matrix or not, what the fights were, versus this one where they didn't have the same mechanism for getting in and out of the Matrix. You know what I mean? It felt
they didn't have that, and it wasn't against the Smiths. It was against the drones or whatever they call them. The horde, the zombies, the whatever they were.
Mm-hmm. So there was those the kind of the rules that defined what that was going on weren't there in this movie.
Right.
So it felt a little bit lost to me.
That affected the fight scenes, I think, too. Mm-hmm. So the first fight scene in the office building I liked.
I did too.
The one on the train, I didn't care as much about. It felt like it ran really long. The one with the Merovingian in the warehouse, I felt like there was no point to it. There was no point.
That one to me, that was the first time I got the movie. I'm like,
fight. And it ran really long.
It did run really long. Yeah. And it was excellent choreography. I mean, the fight was actually really good to watch. Yeah. But I didn't care about it because I was like, what are we doing here? What's the plan?
You didn't understand why he showed up. You didn't understand what his motivations were. I mean, okay, revenge. Okay, whatever. Yeah, but I mean, really though.
And plus, he was such a good character in the second and third movie.
And here he was disposable.
Right.
Uselessly disposable.
Yep.
And his rambling for the dialogue, like what you could understand of it, and I watched it with subtitles and stuff too. It was like all a bunch of, and there we go back to the whole sequel. He's talking about, he's going to come back in a spinoff with all his minions and kill everybody. Again, we went back and revisited the Preachy again. It's like every opportunity they had to stick something in there, but it felt like a wasted scene and a long scene.
Yeah, it did.
But the scene with Neil Patrick Harris, or the analyst, I should say, and Neo and Tiffany, right after that,
right.
That worked for me. I liked
the whole thing with him shooting a bullet at her, and that worked really well. I like that scene. That was good. It told you what was going on. It set the rules for where we were. It felt more Matrixy than the other ones did.
Right, and the whole bullet time thing that they did. I liked that they took it and they spun it and they made it useful to the storytelling, and they made it a hurdle that Neo has to find a way through and presumably can't. So I liked that. The second act I thought was kind of rough. I mean, it's hard to tell where the first act ended and the second act began because there's some kind of overlap, it felt like, between the two. But going back to not Zion, but what's the new place? Io or something?
Io, yeah, wasn't it? Yep.
So Niobe, I liked her character in the third Matrix movie, and in this one, like, I just wanted to push her off the cliff.
Yeah. She didn't work for me either here. Yep. It
was like she was there just to be a pain in the butt, just to be this grumpy old lady who didn't have the flexibility to be able to see and appreciate what's in front of her. And you would have thought, based on that character and what she'd experienced, that she would have grown into having the wisdom to at least.
But you also got to think that not everybody grows older and more wise. Maybe she grew older and more cynical, and that's kind of where she's at.
That's kind of fair, except look at the world they have. So they have artificial sunlight. Now, if you look at all the improvements from the third Matrix movie to the real world that they're living in now, I'll come back to that. I'm going to save that for the end, but it's better. You would think, I mean, she's talking about, she would wake up to nightmares and thinking she's hearing alarms and stuff going off. And then she wakes up and she looks around and it's peace.
Right.
So you would think that, I don't know. I felt like everything she did was an overreaction and that the character was wasted.
Yeah. It felt like they were trying to recreate the whole, controversy between, Locke and Morpheus you
need that person in authority,
right,
to be able to rebel against
this. Yeah, right.
But it felt rote. It felt like a trope.
It did. It did. So now, and I think you're going to mention this later. We'll talk about this later. But now you're talking about like the differences between the old city and the new city and kind of where we're at. And I've got some issues with not so much the story here in the movie, but the continuity of what we had versus what we have now in terms of the world building.
Okay, let's get to that when we get to the end then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we're going to be on the same page with that.
Probably. Yeah. Because I think that deserves its own little analysis there.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I stopped taking notes about a third of the way through the second act, except one little sentence at the end, which we'll get to at the end. I tell you what, just a sidebar. My second viewing, I started it last night. I was so exhausted and tired. I could not keep my eyes open any longer. And I'm like, you know what? I must be more tired than I thought. I guess I'm just going to go to bed early. I looked at the clock and it was like creeping up on 8 p.m.
Well, you are getting older, Eric.
Well, come on. My birthday's not for a few more days. And I typically stay up. Like if it's before 11 o'clock at night, I don't go to bed because I can't sleep. Like midnight is my bedtime. So if I can't keep my eyes open at 8 o'clock and it's after an hour of this movie, what does that tell you about the movie? I finished the rest of it today. I had a crappy day today. Just everything fell apart. Literally, my little Lego thing back there with the light my bricks thing with the Boba Fett. Went to move it, accidentally popped one of the things out. Had to search for a little piece. Then it wouldn't stick back on with the light. I had to go get super glue. Like literally, things falling apart. Got done with the day. Sat down, watched The Matrix Resurrections, and I'm like, oh, I want to go back to the rest of my day now. Because this is even worse than, reinstalling media servers and like all of the work stuff that I had to do. It was rough getting through. I gave up on taking notes partway through, but the plan. So they talk to Niobe. They go do this other stuff. There's the Merovingian. There's the connection with the analyst. We find out who the analyst really is. And I liked that. I liked that character and how they used him. Then they go back to Niobe. And then we get Priyanka something. Jonas. Priyanka Chopra Jonas.
Chopra, yeah. Oh, that's right. She married Jonas Boy. I forgot about that. Yeah.
That's something I keep forgetting. I'm like, what's the rest of her last name now? And who played Sati, the little girl from the third Matrix movie. Mm-hmm. I think in the end of the second one as well. So she's grown up now and, she's a program.
Yep.
Right? So Niobe's sitting out there on the balcony again, yelling at everybody until the moment that Sati shows up and then everything is all happy. Oh, just kidding. You kids go and do your thing now. So they come up with a plan to break in and get Trinity out. And of course, they're doing the trope of we're going to explain the plan and then it's going to cut away to the executing of the plan as we cut back and give you exposition for each of those things of the plan. Little overdone. Mm-hmm. I did kind of like Army of Thieves, where he's like, so that's what we're going to do. And they're like, no, we already did it. We just did it.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a unique way to handle it in that movie, which was kind of cool.
I know you didn't like the movie, but that part,
right, but that was unique. That was good. Yep.
So we get that and they go in and they have the whole end sequence of the movie. So Neo's going into the Matrix to try to talk Trinity / Tiffany into coming out of the Matrix. They have to do some little brain transfer thing with Bugs. They've got to, all of this stuff. Well, we skipped over the whole thing about why Neo and Trinity were being kept in the pod. So they were basically reconstructed, medically brought back to life to be used as batteries again. Mm-hmm. And the analyst figured out that the more heightened their emotions, the more energy they can get out of them. Didn't really understand why they had to have those two in particular. Like, did they not have enough energy from the billions of other people on Earth?
Yeah, that was a little unclear to me too. And it's just and that does kind of. I mean, we might as well get into some of the world building stuff because to me it's like, so we ended the last movie, right?
Yep.
Where people get a choice, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
But to me, I'm like, I think of myself, okay, so we had the war and the war ended and we had a little truce thing going on, but we left 80% of the people behind. It's like, I mean, you don't just, somebody invades your country and it's like, okay, we're going to just take, Connecticut out and be our own thing and you take the rest of the country. And we're okay with that.
Well, it's like Canada with Quebec, right?
Sure, there you go.
I'm half Canadian. I can make those jokes. Thank you.
But it's like, so I'm thinking to myself, like, well, we really did just leave behind, no man left behind. This is every man left behind.
Well, was it though, or were they given a choice?
We don't really know.
Because you know what? Everybody thinks that, I would choose the real world and blah, 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 because that matters. And you saw the conditions they had, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I'd be choosing.
I don't want my life to suck any more than it already does. Like, I could be worse off.
Yeah, no, I'd be like
my life isn't great.
There saying I got the steak and
I could be worse.
I'm good.
Yeah, and listen, I don't even have steak. I'm like, I groan when I have to eat McDonald's, but I do it because like I can't do the steak, and I would still take the blue pill. So because I don't want to be eating with the sludge thing,
right.
The little squeezy tube thing with the clothes that are falling apart.
Well, now they have strawberries though, so hey.
Yeah, well, we're going to come back to that too, but. So you're right, but I think that a lot of people chose to stay in.
Okay.
And I think that if I had been able to do a side by, like, I know that I would sit there and do the philosophical thing and say, nope, I want the real. I want to wake up. And then the moment I did, I'd be like, holy crap, what is this mess? No, put me back in right now. How do I stick this thing back in the back of my head again?
Yep.
So if you do a side-by-side comparison, you're going to stay in. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
Because otherwise, like, you're literally living in a hole in the ground. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
Those people didn't want to be there. They were there to survive. Right? So, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And the point is you should have the choice. And that's what the trilogy was about. And that's what this movie tried to be about. But remind me, don't let me forget to talk about choices. Because I'll forget. And I want to come back to that because that's another sticking point for me about this movie. So, yeah, world building. So that was the end of the third movie.
Mm.
And then...
And somehow they had to, revive.
Yep. There's a purge.
Right. But then, you're right. They did not explain why they needed Neo and Trinity and why they had to have that super secure chamber for the two of them. What they never really said why they were so important.
Why there was a purge in the first place. And then second of all, like post-purge doesn't seem that bad either. And then, like you said, why do they need Trinity and Neo specifically? Like, we got the fact, we can get a lot of energy out of them. Well, yeah, I can get a lot of energy out of a watch battery if I, like, you can't do this, but let's say overclock the watch battery or something, or like stick bigger needles and do whatever, make some stuff up, right? Like somehow I can take a little tiny battery and amp it up, and that's great. Or I've got a whole electrical grid. I can just plug my device into the wall.
Right.
So you're talking about two people. They're humans. Like this isn't, the power inside the Matrix or the One or all that kind of stuff. These are just humans. You're not going to get that much power out of them. And then here's the thing. The whole premise of the movie revolved around that point.
Yeah, right.
And they didn't explain it.
Right.
So now we're starting to get into the things that I want to drop about how this movie was bad. You introduced this premise. We have to get both of them out. We don't know why it's important that they be kept in. We don't know why he's willing to sacrifice the entire world to keep the two of them together. And then we don't know why they have to get out. And none of it's ever explained as to why it's important. So what did it matter?
Okay. Yeah, I see your point. And that was a sticking point in my mind, but I'm going off of the first half of the movie and the feelings it gave me about nostalgia.
I tell you what, I wish I'd stopped through the first half of the movie and just killed it right there. I can continue with some of the other things if you'd like.
No, please do. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I want to hear them.
Okay, so that was point one. And so I want to do this point by point. You accept the fact that that's at least a good point?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So there's number one. Number two, we talked a little bit about this. They have, instead of Zion, which was just a big cave falling apart, now they have this big, spacious, open area with fake sunlight. And yeah, it's fake, I get it, but fake sunlight, like actual day and night cycles, with better technology. They're able to grow like fruits and vegetables. They have AIs who are working with them. They have robots and machines who are working with them. There's some synergy there. They're at peace. There is not a war going on. Okay? So far, pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Comparatively speaking. And the people who wanted out got out. And the people who want to stay in stayed in. And people had a choice. I'm going to come back to the choice thing again later, too. So, Neo gets out. Neo's like, well, now we have to get Trinity out. I'm like, well, we're not sure we can. Well, we have to. And the analyst is like, well, no, Neo needs to come back in because we get energy from him. So Neo gets Trinity out, and then they go, like, I don't want to say bully the analyst at the end, but basically they say, oh, yeah, no, we're not here to negotiate. We're here to tell you we're going to go remake the world. Well, why? I mean, the world's not in that bad a shape. I mean, so first of all, they can't remake the real world, just the Matrix. And even the Matrix wasn't that bad off. But it's like things are the best they've been by far throughout the entire 4-movie series. And you're going to say, nope, we're gods now. We're going to do everything differently. What was so wrong in the first one? What was broken that needed fixing? I get it. Neo specifically had a miserable life. Okay. You know what? I mean, two things. Number one, he had the type of life that a lot of people have miserable lives. Now, maybe that's of their own molding, and his wasn't. He was being contained in it, and so I get that. Okay. Number two, both he and Trinity were supposed to have been dead. Like dead. Right. Dead. And they're alive. Maybe a thank you? I get it. What they're doing to him is abusive. Period. End of discussion. Yes.
Yep.
Trinity's life seems okay. And she was dead, and now she's alive. And when it comes to choices, this isn't the point I was going to make.
Okay.
But there's a point. Neo gets one choice, basically, in this whole movie, and it was that I'm going to give Trinity a choice, and if Trinity says, no, I'm staying here, then I'll go back into the Matrix. So even Neo got that it's more important that she be alive than he be happy. So again, maybe, like, I know he's not going to say thank you, but I'm thinking things are not as bad as they could have been, right? Overall, the end of the third movie left Neo and Trinity in a bad place, and the world, both worlds, had been in a bad place up to the end of the movie, and that's when things started getting good. Now we get to the end of this movie, and it's like, hey, all that good stuff? Yeah, no, we're taking over now. So that didn't work for me.
Well, I guess they're going off the premise of you're always better off in the real world than in some fantasy.
Are you? Again, you saw the real world, right?
Right. But that's the premise they're going off of, that free will and real is better than fake and slavery.
But shouldn't you give everybody the choice? Wasn't that the whole point? About listen to like every line of dialogue Morpheus had was, that's no choice at all, and stuff like that. So they should have the choices.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Are they going to take a survey and let the people rebuild the Matrix the way they want? Or are they going to, as they said in the movie, put rainbows all over the sky because it sounds like a good idea? Well, what if that's not what the other people wanted? Don't they get a choice?
Right. Yeah, we should have a vote right somewhere. I mean, you got to elect somebody. Yeah.
So that didn't work for me.
Right. And the whole ending of that did seem just
petty. Almost.
Bizarre to me. Yeah. Petty is a good word for it. But it just seemed bizarre. It's like, what? So
what are you trying to do?
Back into the Matrix to do your own thing, and I don't get why you're doing that.
Right.
Because now you're going to make it better, air quotes, for the people in the Matrix.
After all you went through inside the Matrix, why wouldn't you just stay the hell out of it? Yeah. Unplug the thing and never jack in again. Like, I'm thinking if it was that traumatic for me, you couldn't get me anywhere near electricity, let alone a computer. Like, I'm done. I'm going to go live in the cave and grow my strawberries, and that's it. Don't freaking touch me.
Yep. And have that giant robot, manatee.
Sure. Because it was actually kind of cute.
It was, yeah.
Not going to lie. Okay, so that's my second point.
Okay.
Third point. Neo had no agency in this movie. Neo was dragged through this whole movie. He had almost no choices. I gave the one exception, which really his choice was to sacrifice himself if somebody else's choice goes a certain way, which that's a technicality. Basically, he had no agency through this whole movie. Everybody else took actions that mattered. They got him out. They got Trinity out. He tried to convince Trinity to leave and couldn't.
Right.
The one thing he attempted to do, he failed. Even when he was speaking up to Niobe, she basically told him to shut the hell up and don't you take my agency away from my captain.
Right.
He didn't even have his own agency there.
No,
the entire movie, he was a waste of a character. The fight scenes at the end, he couldn't fly. It was Trinity that flew.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, I think in the writing, they were trying to transition that over from him to her, whether it's because they wanted to have a strong female character, because they wanted to have it different than the first movie. I don't know.
Then bring her back. He died at the end of the third one. If you weren't going to use him, you didn't have to bring him back. He was already dead.
Yeah, but what would a Matrix movie be without Neo?
Better?
Would you be able to do that? No.
In this case, no, I wouldn't want to do it. But if this is the lazy writing you're going to do, yeah, it would have been better, in my opinion.
Okay.
So Neo had no agency. Now, Trinity had no agency until her, quote, awakening. And her awakening was she's walking away and somebody calls her name a couple of times, which she has been called like 4,700 times before. And then all of a sudden it's just, oh, I hate that name. He-ya, and starts doing the kung fu stuff. It's like, where did that come from? People talk about Anakin's turn to the dark side being abrupt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, what happened here? We have no idea what turned her, why she turned, because she was completely not on board. And then all of a sudden, literally, she clicks and she is. So she had no agency through the whole movie. And then at the end, when she does, it's basically just the whole ass kicking thing. So again, she does nothing important in this movie. So you want to talk about the transitioning from Neo to her? I was prepared for that one too, Lou. Guess what? Trinity has no agency in this movie.
Right. I didn't like the transition. I thought that was horrible.
Yeah.
And like I said, the whole ending of the movie just did not work for me. And to me, much about what I like about this movie and why I rated it so high for last year's on our top 5 list was because it felt like, like you said before, just give me another Matrix movie. That's kind of how I still feel. I'm giving it some.
I'm going to get you to knock it down to at least number 6. That's my goal by the end of this episode.
I give it enough nostalgia points that to me it still feels good. There's problems with it, but it just feels good to me.
I have more. I have more problems.
Yeah, no.
So to that point, before
you
people
bring up really good points. They really are. I mean, I'm not I'm not arguing with any of your points.
Okay, so I'm 3 for 3 so far, right? At least on the validity of the points, and they're okay.
They're valid. Yes.
All right. So I understand before people write in or post comments in the YouTube channel, which, by the way, feel free to do so. Go to youtube.com/randomchatter, put comments below. If you don't like my opinions, keep in mind Lou loved the movie, so still like it. Hit the like button, regardless of whether you like my opinion, you like Lou's opinion. Either way, there's something to like, right? But put your comments below. Let us know what you think. I know that the idea was supposed to be that the two of them are stronger together. I like that theme. I think they executed it poorly, but I'm glad they chose to include that theme. And I like that idea, that it's not so much that he is the one, it is that the two of them are the one united together. Mm-hmm. Like that I'm okay with. I feel like they executed it badly. So anyway, my point was, he had no agency all the way through.
Yep.
She had no agency all the way through. That bugged me. Oh, by the way,
yes.
Props to Keanu Reeves. Especially agreeing to be in this movie where he doesn't really do anything, and yet he fully committed to this. He aged like 20 years for the sake of this character. It's like 2 decades worth of aging to play this role.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
That is.
Just saying. There are plenty of people out there who didn't get that joke, and that's okay. We still love you. I kind of feel like, and I think this is maybe somewhere where we're going to disagree. I feel like the whole point about remakes and reboots and all of that kind of stuff, it really kind of felt so heavy-handed, and it was so down on itself. This movie, when you get into the meta, tore itself apart. It was complaining about Warner Brothers making Matrix sequels in a Warner Brothers made Matrix sequel.
Right.
You can't express more hatred toward yourself than complaining about the existence of yourself within yourself in a movie. Like that's
right, but I like that.
But
I thought
here's
that
the
was
thing: it's kind of twisted because it's like if the movie sucks, well, we told you that this movie inherently has to suck, so we were right. So we got the right message across, and we succeeded with this movie.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll just say that
there's some twisted circular logic.
Yeah, but I'll just say that most people don't agree with that. At least according to Rotten Tomatoes.
62%. I mean, it barely squeaked in at the fresh rate.
And the audience score is 64, so they're both on par. It's not like one's way out of whack.
Uh-huh. And without getting into politics, next time a president is elected that you don't like, talk to me about the brilliance of the crowd.
I know. I'm just saying. There are people that like this movie. And I know it's not perfect. I'm not saying it is.
It was a solution looking for a problem. And it never found the problem it was trying to solve. This whole movie.
I mean, so I will say this. I mean, as much as I was looking forward to this, as much as I really wanted the Matrix movie, as much as I loved the nostalgia of the opening third of the movie.
Dude, biggest Matrix fan you're going to find.
No, I know.
Love it. And I know you are too.
Yep. It's just, to me, it felt like coming home. Even down to seeing the birds flying in the sky like the Sentinels in Zion. It was like,
I liked really that cool. Part too.
It's like, that's really cool. I guess it was the little things that maybe you go, oh yeah. And I kind of forgave the fact that there was really no story to it at the end.
But you know why it was the little things that made you go, oh yeah? Because those were the only meaningful things in the movie.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it was just devoid of content. So, but this is what I'm saying, Lou, like, what was the story? The story to me was, hey, we found one of those famous old people. Let's go get him out. I know you can relate to that. Other than the famous part. Oh, shoot, we forgot the other one. Well, we can't go back in and get her. Oh, but the first famous one really wants us to? It's going to be really hard, But okay, we'll go back in and get her. They go back in and get her, and it's like, and now they're going to go change things. Why? We're not sure. Well, what needs to be changed? Don't know that one either. Well, what are they going to do? I don't really know any of the answers to any of those questions. Lou, that is the plot.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole plot.
I know. I get it.
That's literally the plot. There's really not much else.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I agree with you.
You do.
It doesn't make you want to hate the movie, though.
I'm not asking you to hate it. I'm asking you to drop it down to number 6, so it's not in your top 5 anymore. Just asking for a little bit, Lou. Just a little tiny bit. You admit the writing, like the plot, the story.
Yep.
Nonsense.
It fell apart. I mean,
that's all I asked.
halfway through the movie started to fall apart, and it was definitely a train wreck.
Okay,
but it was still that nostalgia part that got me through the movie. I'm like, okay, to me, it's like, okay, I still, as much as I love all the Matrix movies, 2 and 3 still had some stuff at the end that by the time I got to the end of them, I'm like, okay, it isn't what I want. Kind of like I talked about the Phantom Menace. It wasn't what I wanted, but it's what we got, so I'm happy with it. And I kind of feel the same way about this one here too. It's like we should have never went back to do another Matrix movie. As much as I want one, we should have never gone back because this didn't need to have anything else there.
So the argument is they did exactly the right thing.
I'm happy
by
to
your
have
own
it.
argument.
Right. No, I agree. Happy to have it because it was nostalgia. It was fun. But at the same time, I'm like, there's nothing else to tell. You can't, unless you're going to tell a different story with different characters and different entirely, which wouldn't have sold very well because no one's going to buy that movie as far as studios go. You can bet me and say, hey, we're making another Matrix movie, but without Neo and Trinity and new characters, and this is different and that's different. And they're going to be like, no, we're not going to spend the money on that.
You know what? I would have been okay with it because it could have done anything they wanted with the story.
I would have been happy too because it's like you could do it.
You're expanding the world. Yeah.
Right. We don't need to go back to the same old things we had before.
I've been on record for saying that I did not feel that Star Wars Episode 7 was just a rehash of Episode 4. In fact, that complaint confused me for a while. And after enough people explained where they were going through it, I'm like, okay, yes, there is a checklist of similarities. There are also enough things about the story that are so significantly different that it did not feel like the same movie to me. And I've been watching Episode 4 since I was like 5 years old.
Right.
And I'm not as old as you, never will be, but I'm old now. So I spent a lot of time watching Episode 4 and I did not feel Episode 7 was the same thing. I understand the people who, if they did feel it was the same thing, that upset them. In this case, getting the same thing would have been better than what we got. Because what we got was nothing. We got nostalgia and there was no story.
Right.
The nostalgic parts were good. I liked them. I liked, and I liked what they did with Smith, and I liked what they did with the analyst, and what little explanation we got of the nature of the analyst and stuff. I kind of understood, sort of, and liked it. And the little things were the best parts of the movie. The use of the cat, the analyst having the cat, who was named Deja Vu, by the way. That was brilliant. I liked that. It was all of those little touches that were nice to watch. But it was just so, like the second viewing for me. Normally, the second viewing of a movie is when I say, okay, this is where I'm building understanding so we can get on a podcast and analyze it and talk about it a little bit. And I felt so much more disinterested in the movie as I'm watching it the second time. Like it was just, I was almost offended about how bad it was.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I can't say that because I still enjoyed it the second and third viewings.
Okay.
Primarily for the nostalgia. I mean, I'll say definitely say that. I mean, there's not a huge at the end of the movie going, oh my God, look what they did here. There was none of that where there wasn't the first one.
Yeah, I said it for different reasons, but yeah, I'm with you. You're right.
But I don't know. It just comes down to the fact that, I mean, we all have our guilty pleasure movies. This will probably be one of my guilty pleasure movies going forward because it still makes me feel good.
If this is a guilty pleasure movie for someone, I support that.
But I totally see where you're going. Because
we're going to watch Kung Pao Enter the Fist next week, and you're going to get to see one of my guilty pleasure movies. Because it's my birthday, and I've been asking for this for the last 4 birthdays. Somebody's going to watch it with me this year. It's going to happen.
Okay.
I rewatched Matrix Resurrections for you, Lou, because it's your guilty pleasure. So you got to do this for me. You know what? By the way, quick shout out.
I watched the American World Police for you.
Oh, that wasn't a guilty pleasure for me. No, I just wanted to see if you'd watch it. That was a totally different thing. Shout out to the Clerks Minute podcast. I was I don't think it's aired yet. I don't think any of them have aired yet. I've got to check, but they're doing the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Oh, because we're talking reboots and sequels and stuff.
Yep.
And so they break it apart in little 5-minute segments, and I was on one of the episodes last week. It was a lot of fun. Nice. Love those guys. If you're not watching those,
they're good.
They're good. So Kyle was there and was at the end of the recording. I think it was after the microphone shut off. We're talking movies, and he started spitting out these quotes. Kung Pao Enter the Fist. And I said, I've been trying to get Lou and Tim to watch that for ages now. And we're spitting quotes back out left and right, just off the top of our heads. And it was awesome, Lou. And you're missing out. Just saying.
Maybe I will watch it and go, oh my God, why didn't I listen to you years ago?
No, that's not going to happen.
I might. Oh. But yeah, I don't.
I'm not that delusional. But yeah, shout out to the Clerks Minutes guys.
Nice.
Great series of podcasts. So I mean, those are my points. I think those are my arguments.
Okay. And like I said, I definitely get all your points. I mean, none of them I'm looking at going, no, I don't see that. I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from because they all make sense.
And I can see where you're coming from with a lot of the good stuff too. There were a lot of good things about this movie.
Yep.
I think it just boils down to what you said before. Where do things balance out for you? Is the nostalgia enough?
Right. I mean, to me, they got us back into the Matrix world really well.
They did.
And then when they got us there, they didn't know where they were going.
Right.
So and that's what it comes down to. They didn't have a set plan for what we're going to get out of this one. And I kind of feel the same way with 2 and 3. They were great movies. I enjoyed them. But they really didn't have, and more 3 than 2, but they didn't have a good ending planned out for that. I mean, the first movie was almost perfect. It had a great intro, good meat in the middle, and a good ending, even down to the point where he's like, you know what? This is it, and he flies away, and it's like, that was fantastic. And
yeah, the first ending was the best.
If we never had any more Matrix content as far as movies go, it would have been okay. Because it was a good story, opened and closed, and it was done. You come back to it and have the second and third movies, and it was like they didn't quite have that planned out as well.
Okay.
I
liked the ending of the third one.
Did you?
It wasn't perfect, but yeah, I thought it was adequate. It was acceptable. To me, it made sense.
It didn't make me go, oh God, what'd they do here?
That's how I felt with this one, though.
It didn't. Yeah, I can see that in this one more than the third one. But the third one just didn't leave me in a good place like the first one did. It was like it kind of comes down to, and I look at things like this a lot when you talk about like JMS and how he did about Von Pfeiffer. He had the story all in his head before he did the first one.
Yeah.
The first season. And this is like that. So we had this movie idea for one movie, and we did it really well. And now they want us to do more. Now what do we do?
And you know what?
I don't have a plan for that.
Talk about a failing of this movie. He's worked with the Wachowskis before. Where the hell was he for this one? Come on, Joe. We're not on a first name basis, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just, and all others out there. I'm just,
Yeah, because he did Sense8
JMS.
with him, right?
Yeah. They needed to bring JMS back. JMS, Joe Michael Straczynski, or Mr. Straczynski, Your Honor, is probably how I should respond and refer to him. he needs to write all science fiction from here on out. Star Wars, Marvel, The Matrix, definitely, and the upcoming Babylon 5 content. Like all of it.
He's already doing that.
Give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to go to the CW. Hey, by the way, guess what network's up for sale?
Yeah, I know.
No, that may be the biggest failing of this movie is not getting JMS on board to write this. And if we ever do get him on a podcast, I'm going to refer him back. I'm going to play the clip from this so that he can hear that. Because I want to know what his excuse is. Because he owes us as fans, we want to talk about entitled fandom here. He owes us the writing of everything forever and ever. Because he does it right.
He does it. He does a lot of things really, really well.
It's not the first season. Somebody else can write the first season. He can write all the others. First season of Jeremiah was really good. And Crusade eventually got really good.
It was good. Yep. So, in terms of where we are now with Matrix and what we're going to get down the road, is there room for more Matrix movies?
What are you going to do with them? Like, where's the conflict? You have to come up with another analyst-like character, or you have to revisit an entire war. And what do you do with a war against AIs with humans in pods versus the humans that aren't in pods? Like, there's no variation you can do with that. And, we talk about this a lot when we speculate about, what if and what can you do? We're not writers.
Right.
I'm not a writer. You're not a writer. And we always kind of give that caveat. Well, hey, Kevin Feige could come up with something. No, this is the case where Kevin Feige and maybe even Sir Straczynski, Your Honor, might not be able to come up with a way out of this. Like, they're done. Yeah. You either have to have a war or you have to recycle another analyst-like character. And then what do you do with Trinity and Neo? The only thing you can do is to go back and tell other stories, which we had just talked about the fact they're not going to bring in new characters and new stories and stuff like that. You could maybe do a spin-off of some sort with Bugs and those characters now. But they didn't really position them in any sort of way to do anything. Plus, where's the conflict? To have a story, there has to be a conflict. Any story. You pick any story, Lou. It has a conflict.
Yeah. Yep.
Where's the conflict going forward?
And characters need to grow and change.
That's the other thing.
The same. Right.
I don't see it happening. I think they killed the franchise.
I think they did.
But I think that was also intentional. I think they were going back through, again, you look at all of the heavy-handed reboots and sequels inherently suck thing. And they were kind of preaching this to us from the first minutes of the film.
Yep.
Right back to that first quote. Why use old code to mirror something new?
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's fine. I mean, I don't want them to do anything more with this, to tell you the truth, but it's just...
I want other stories in this world. I don't want a continuation of the Neo saga, if we're going to use like Star Wars terms.
Right.
Expand on one of the Animatrix stories or branch off into some completely new side thing. This is a brilliant world they've created. Go back earlier in the timeline. I don't care. There's so much you could have done here. And instead, they did like the worst possible thing they could have done.
Yep.
And it wasn't even that the concept was bad. Like you said, the creation of
that was fantastic.
The first act was pretty good.
Yeah.
The conceit for how they get back into the Matrix was good. The reason for having Trinity and Neo brought back to life seemed kind of good. There were parts that were confusing, and we don't know why it was so important that they be isolated like that. That made no sense. But we had their bodies right there. We could just patch their bodies up and plug them back in.
Right.
Okay.
It made sense to do that because we needed to have a story. We needed to have something to get.
But that's
the only reason why I was there.
Like, get a story.
Yeah, right.
They only had 3 writers, I guess, and...
Yeah, well...
Okay. I don't have
so
anything else to say, I guess.
Kind of convinced me I can take it out of my top 5 for 2021.
It's down to 6 at least?
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. I'll find something else above it because
you're so nice.
As much as I love the movie for what it did for me, emotionally, it still didn't have an ending. It didn't have a good plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll concede that to you.
And I will concede, once again, there were definitely not just good, but I would say brilliant moments in the film. And there was a lot of the nostalgia that I did love. I loved going back to that world again. I just didn't like what they did when we were there.
And, you know, and even in some of the fight stuff towards the end, I did like the fact that they were using, they call it drones, I guess I call them, right? Where they take the people and just cannon fodder. I mean, literally throwing them off the building. There was some brilliant ways to do new things to make it dangerous in the Matrix, which I thought was great. Kind of like when they did
creativity of that.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yep. Which was kind of like mirrored in like the second movie when we had the highway scene. It's like, that was brilliant, you know, doing a scene like that. And this was something totally different. I'm like, oh, okay.
But it upped that game even further. I mean, you're basically talking about human bullets.
Right.
Yeah.
Just drop them off a building and they're going to do damage. It's like, that was cool, you know.
That really was. I'll give them that too. The creativity behind the choreography for the fight scenes and stuff. Even the stuff earlier on too, like falling through the door sideways into the other thing and in that hallway.
Yeah. The only thing out of that front section that really kind of went, was the whole thing about, oh, I've never worn other glasses before. I'm like, what is that? Who wrote this part of the scene?
You're right.
I was like, that was kind of weird.
Yeah. But that was a small enough sliver of dialogue that was awkward that I could forgive that.
It was, yeah.
But
and I also didn't understand the whole pulling a program out of the Matrix. Still didn't think that was explained very well.
Yeah, why did they need to? Well, he wasn't even in the Matrix, right? He was in a modal. So he was in like a little self-contained pocket universe, kind of.
Yeah,
within the Matrix.
I thought the fact that was that they could stumble in and out of the modal. I thought that was the thing. He knew where the modal was. He was watching it like they were watching it.
Well, they found the modal because of the guy who was the neologist on the team.
Yeah.
So he's the one that helped them find the modal. They had to go into the modal to get the program out. So they were already able to get into it. But then, was it just because he would be able to convince Neo to take the red pill?
Yeah, I don't know. That seemed a little bit not explained very well.
There was a lot in this movie that was not explained very well. Just saying. Like, really.
Well, you don't have to watch it for a while because it's not available.
We don't want stuff spoon-fed to us. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it now. It's gone. No, it'll be coming back to HBO Max.
It will be, yeah.
I would not pay to see this in the theater. And I say that not because you might not find it worth it, but I say it because you might not find it worth it. My point is, I think this is going to be divisive enough for a lot of people that even if you like the other movies, that's not a good litmus test in this case as to whether you're going to like this one or not. I think it's a safer bet to wait, watch it at home on HBO Max, especially again with
I would
COVID.
I would agree. Yeah, I'd agree.
I could not recommend, hey, just go see it in the theaters. I think 50% of the people are going to walk out disappointed. That's my opinion. So
yeah, no.
All right. Any other thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I think we hit everything. I think we beat this horse to death.
Kind of like some of the points in the movie. All right. Well, that's going to do it then for this episode of Movie Chatter. We never decided what we're going to cover next.
I don't know. Now we don't have Robin with us to kind of.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that offline. And we need to bring our not yet announced streaming show.
Yeah.
Streaming television show. That's not a television show. It's a podcast show about streaming television. We're going to title it something better than that and a lot shorter.
Let's hope. Yeah,
let's hope. So we need to get that up and running here pretty soon too. But that's going to do it for this episode of Movie Chatter. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Matrix Resurrections. Yeah. If any, we ask this every week, but if ever you are going to leave comments for one of our episodes, we would really like to hear it for this one. So go to randomchatter.com/YouTube or youtube.com/randomchatter. Throw your comments in down below. Hit the subscribe and like button while you're there. Maybe the notification button too. You could email it to us. You could hop into our Discord server, randomchatter.com/Discord. But, let's do the YouTube thing. Let's throw the comments down below. let us know what you thought of Matrix Resurrections. Am I off my rocker? Is Lou correct? The nostalgia for this was solid enough to carry the weight of the movie, or did the story fall to shambles to the point where there was just nothing to resurrect? See what I did?
I see that,
Yeah,
yes.
it was pretty bad. I saved that joke to the end because
it wasn't good, but I did see it.
No,
yeah.
you'd think the writers of the movie came up with that joke. See, that was a better joke because it... Okay, never mind. I'll stop now. We will be back Sunday night with more Force Chatter and Random Chatter. We're still covering the book of Boba Fett. And Random Chatter, we're going to be covering the things that we've watched this week, except this one. Oh, boy. And then we will be back next Tuesday night for more movie chatter. Robin should be back with us then as well. And we will keep you guys posted on what we will be covering. So until then, take care and let us know what you think about The Matrix Resurrections. See you later.